leaving business as usual and we're going on an adventure that's going to cost us something. Like, you don't get to just go back home afterwards. Like, that's the sucky part about this work. I tell everyone with the fight, I'm like, you are legitimately like taking the pill. You are leaving business as usual and you can't go back. This is some Matrix reality here. You will be introduced to things that you wish you did not know about yourself. But the moment you know it, you now have the power to do something about it. And nobody else has that power, just you.
Jake, is there a crisis of masculinity within the church? And if so, what is sitting at the root of that problem, in your opinion?
The root of the problem is the same as it is with culture, which is there is no rites of passage. So we never clearly understand when we walk from boyhood to manhood. And if we have no delineation between boyhood and manhood in ritual rites of passage, or what we'd call initiation, or whatever you want to call it, if we don't have that delineation, then we don't know what we're responsible for. If I'm taking the same responsibilities of childhood into my masculinity, then I'm going to make everything about masculinity about me. It's going to be an ego pursuit. It's going to be a hero. I want to be a hero. I don't want to be a warrior. I want to be a prince. I don't want to be a king. I want you to treat me as if I'm the center of the universe for the rest of my life. And the moment that shifts, number one, do we lose, when we don't have that, number one, we lose connection with God. Completely, because we make the entire universe about us, not just our faith journey, not just our families, not just our parenting, not just our jobs. All of it becomes about me. I'm not anchored to anything bigger than myself. And what ends up happening is I end up recreating that in my family. So my kids walk out the very same lack of responsibility, lack of faith, lack of purpose that I'm walking in because I never knew when I crossed that line.
Yeah, a lot to unpack with that. And I think that's going to give us a good anchor for the conversation today. You know, when you speak of rights and responsibilities of men or masculinity, can you kind of unpack that there a little bit? Like, what are the rights and responsibilities of a man?
I think that it's pretty clear that a man is responsible. We say that a man has three things he's got to be responsible for. It is to honor God, protect women, and prepare children. That is the main responsibility of a man. It does not matter what he gets out of it. It does not matter if he gets celebrated. It does not matter if he gets a pat on the butt. It does not matter if he gets a big paycheck. At the end of the day, honor God, which means my life has to be anchored to something bigger than myself. That is the biggest piece of the faith component that most people miss because they make their entire faith or religious journey about them and what they get out of it. When I say honor God, I'm not talking about going to church. I'm talking about anchoring your life to something that is holding everything together. Every relationship, every atom, every single strand of your story is held together by something bigger than you. And then we protect women. We protect women so that women can protect children. Our job isn't to protect children. Our job is to prepare children. And if men protect women well, then children will be protected and defended. And then we send our kids out into the world because we prepared them. And if we're not preparing our children, we are setting them up to be let down and taken advantage of consistently.
I love that. And I'm glad you brought some clarity there to the prepared children, because I was going to definitely follow up with that. But I even love the language around, or the context around, protecting women first. And if that is taking care of, the children will be protected under that, that household, right?
Yeah, there's a reason that there's a mama bear and not a papa bear. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason of like, oh, don't make mama bear upset. Like there's a reason we don't say don't make papa bear upset. We don't say that because a mama bear, you get in between the cubs and a mom bear. If you've ever been up in the wilderness, like we're up here in Northern California, you get between a mom and the cubs, you're done. It does not matter. You are going to get thrashed. And our job as men is to protect the environment so that women can protect the children.
Yeah, so much we can learn from animal nature, about how we're designed to live. Speaking of this, I teed it up with a question about in the church, but I think that the church is now becoming a byproduct of what we're seeing in society. Would you agree? And if so, because I think a lot of this language, protecting women, men are the head, all that kind of stuff, like there's gonna be the whole wave of, a feminist movement that's gonna throw their hands up in the air and scream and shout and no, all that's not the way that's supposed to be. So when did this begin to make its way? Because we could point back to, 40s, 50s, 60s, first wave feminism. When did this begin to make its way into maybe the church?
The Reformation. When we moved, for those that don't know the history of the church, you have this massive thing that took place, right? The Protestant Reformation. And the Protestant Reformation was about removing, there's a ton of stuff in there, Bible in your own language, all this. We're not going to get into the nuances. I'm going to give you my big, broad stroke. So any historians are going to think, hey, man, that's not it. It's way more nuanced. Totally understand. We can have that discussion in a different podcast. My point is, we removed the Eucharist, which is the place of communion. So the blood and body of Jesus as the center of the entire Christian gathering. If you went to church, you knew everything was leading up to the blood and body of Jesus, the small cup, the communion wafer. So the centrality of the gathering was the sacrifice of a man. Okay? We removed that and put in a pulpit, and now the center of our gatherings is man's opinion. So we have 40,000 denominations, and divorce took place in the church before it was ever accepted in culture. And that's denominationalism. 40,000 different people separating purely because they don't agree, right? Like, what's the number one cause for divorce? Is just we don't agree. Like, we just, there's a phrase for it in law, but the idea of we just don't agree, so it's better that we're separated. And so the church instituted that way, way, way before, and then it made its way into family, into culture. Because the idea is when the centrality of a gathering is the sacrificial nature of masculinity, which that's the way I'm going to define it. If I'm a Christian, then my model of manhood is the man Jesus. That's it. The buck stops with that model. He's just not the image of God on earth. He is the express image of what a man does. And that man gets he never once says, this isn't fair. When he's hanging from the cross, he's not hanging from the cross saying, by the way, he was hung there by his bride. Just in case you're wondering, the church is called the bride of Christ. His bride hung him from a tree. And he didn't say, well, you don't have to live with her. You guys are all wrong. Like, no more for me. You're doing it all backwards. He says, forgive her. Forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. This model of masculinity was lost because men in the church lost their value for sacrifice and suffering, number one. Number two, we lost the centrality of that sacrifice and suffering as the image of Christ that we all gather around. And number three, when we lost that, we lost value for our bride because we made our marriages about us, because we made church about us, because we made God about us. And when a man makes his entire life about what he gets out of it, he is stunting his growth immediately, because there is no further growth when you decide it's all about you at the center of all things.
Yeah, man becomes his own idol in a way, and that's removing of the first three things that you said, the honoring of the God. I love what you said there. Jesus is the model of man, or the model of masculinity here on earth. It rings true with a book we've talked about a lot. A great friend, mentor of mine, Josh Cachadorian, wrote The Standard. That's kind of the thesis of his book there, right? As Jesus is the standard of masculinity. And he poses a few arguments in the book, and I'm curious your thoughts in and around this. I would background for me, right? So I was saved in 2018. So I'm still kind of, fumbling through kind of this journey on my own. Like, I'm discovering this stuff every single day. That's why I love to have guys like yourself, right? Because I don't claim to know anything when it comes to these things, but I love hearing from the guys that have been in the trenches for a whole lot longer than I have. I think his argument is that the Jesus of the Bible has been weakened and feminized, and that leads to a feminized male within the church. Would you agree? And if you kind of unpack and share your opinion around there.
Again, I'm going back to the fact that when we would gather, we'd gather around suffering and sacrifice as the primary image. When you remove suffering and sacrifice as the primary image, men have nothing to look up to that calls them into masculinity, has nothing to call them into courage, the difference between a hero and a warrior. Like, little kids are heroes because they're out for their own ego. They want to have their own journey, and they have like their little hero thing, right? A warrior is submitted to a king that's greater than he is. So a warrior is submitted. You don't want to be a Ronin. You want to be a samurai. You want to be submitted to something bigger than yourself. You want to be rooted in something that's everlasting, eternal, and can take the hits that you can't take. And the hits you do have to take have purpose and meaning, because your pain is a gateway to your promise. That's the image we have in Christ. Pain as the gateway to promise. And men lost that. And so what they did was, we got this church structure, this effeminized religious experience where we sing like love songs to Jesus as the primary center and man's opinion as the primary center, and to make you feel good as the primary center, to make you wealthy and to make you healed and to make all these things, which are great, but they're these small partial truths that don't leave us in awe and wonder and leave us in the kind of adventure that men are destined for, made for, created for, and long for at such a deep level. And when we put man's opinion into the center of the church, what we did was we said, whatever gets me the greatest amount of views, whatever gets me the greatest amount of agreement, whatever gets me that the greatest amount of following, right? Like then I'll bend the message to meet those needs so that I continue to grow my influence in the name of. But that there's nothing for that to stand on. And what's happened is we now have an emotionalized, because if we feminize it, it has to become emotionalized, and not that all women are super emotional. That's not what I'm saying. But the primary leading of a woman is her heart. That's good. That is godly. That is correct. And it is both psychologically and physiologically true. So argue it all you want, but there's lots of research on this. So this isn't Jake's opinion. But what we recognize is if men are mostly led by the adventure, by the motivation, by the pain, by the aggression, and women are led by the tenderness, by the kindness, by the connection, well, then show me the church that's leading by aggression. Show me the church that isn't full of people that are, off the rails, that are leading that way, where you're having kindness married to aggression so that you can really see breakthrough in all the areas we're attempting to see breakthrough in our own personal lives, let alone culture.
Yeah, we're talking suffer and sacrifice. That's been a reoccurring, theme here already. And you talked about men are lacking this journey, right? John Eldredge talks about in Wild at Heart the three things that all men desire: a journey to go on, a beauty to rescue, in a battle to fight. Your group is called This Is the Fight. So it can be hard, right? We hear suffer, sacrifice. That language gets thrown around in multiple circles, personal development, and cold plunge is a great example, right? I told you right before we hit record, like I an hour ago, I was in the cold. It's suffering, but it's suffering on a very, very small degree. It's like our world, our culture. I call it the microwave society. Anything we want, push a button, it shows up today. So I think sometimes the suffer and sacrifice, it's like it's hard to even see in today's world. Where can men begin to really look for this fight or look for the actual struggle and sacrifice in the world?
Well, I think in a couple ways, first we have to recognize that suffering is, you can either choose it or it will choose you. So if I'm going to be a baseball player, I don't just I'm not rolling up to Major League Baseball being like, dude, I'm just going to kick butt here. This is going to be amazing, dog. Like, I can't wait. You know what I'm going to do next week? Go to the NFL. No, but yet we walk into marriage like, I'm going to be an amazing husband. We walk into church like, I'm going to be an amazing Christian. We walk into parenting like, dude, I'm going to be a great dad. And now we may not say that out loud. We might have insecurities. We might have some things that we know we need to work on, but we don't go into training because we have a limited vision. We have a selfish vision. Nobody's giving us a big vision of God, a family. Listen, family is the greatest government on planet Earth. It can transition entire generations of beliefs and values and can turn the tide of wars. The reason Constantine, again, I'm going very broad stroke, but Constantine makes Christianity the official religion of Rome. Why? Because they couldn't number the amount of Christians in culture, and they were afraid they were going to be an army that was too big to defeat, even by Rome. That's what family does. Family passes on values. Family strategically aligns with one another for the sake of the common good, not the sake of the individual good. We are looking for something bigger than ourselves, and men are looking to go to war for that. And it's in your own home. That's the crazy part. Yes, you can choose it in working out. Please put down the cheeseburger and take a walk, okay? Yes, you should do a cold plunge. Yes, there's several things that you can do. Take a cold shower. You don't need the water. Just turn it on, because men do hard crap. That's what they do, and it starts in here. And you want a brain that gets, the neural pathways get set up to say, when it's time to go, you go. You don't question it. You don't think about it. The hard thing comes up and you go. That's why we choose suffering. It's why we choose those things in little ways. So when the big way shows up, I'm already primed and ready to go. But we also have those opportunities for men that are married, for men that are, well, let's start with men that aren't married. With men that aren't married, masturbation and pornography, great. There you go. Delayed gratification, instant suffering. And we know the studies on semen retention. Like, you're not making yourself smarter by masturbating all the time, and you're not making yourself any more of a catch by looking at porn. Like, there's a lot happening inside a man. Do you understand how much is happening inside of a man's psyche to say, I am so demasculinized, I'd rather watch another man have sex with another woman? Do you know how demasculized I have to be to go to that length? Like, I don't believe in my own manhood to such a degree, I'd rather watch another man do what I wish I was doing, just on a very basic psychological level. So if you're single, no porn, no masturbation. Wow, there's suffering introduced. Number two, if you're a married man, boom, choose your wife over every other opportunity you're going to get. Sit down with her and have an actual conversation, and sit with her long enough so she feels heard and seen. Is that, well, you're like, well, you're equating that to suffering? Well, I'm equating it to you choosing what you do not want to do for the sake of something that's better for you. Yes, that is a form of suffering. Do the same thing with your kids. I know so many people in the church who will fly 3,000 miles around the world, spend thousands of dollars to minister to strangers, but they can't walk 30 feet across their own living room to minister to their own family. Well, like, what? Who the hell cares? Like, do you think you're a hero because you flew over there? You're not. The real legacy is in your home, not in the nations of the earth where you're going to pretend to go preach the gospel to people who aren't going to see you for the rest of their lives. What about the people who are going to see you every single day for the remainder of your life and know you better than anyone else on planet earth? That's engaging with suffering, because I'm having to choose to put myself in discomfort and vulnerability for the sake of a generation I'm never going to see, because I'm not just thinking about my kids. I'm not just thinking about my wife. I'm thinking about my great-great-grandchildren. And that's what keeps me motivated. A vision bigger than what I currently see in front of me, and a legacy better than I could ever imagine.
Man, when you said how demasculating is that to sit there and watch the screen, right? You're watching another man, do something that you desire to do. You're cuckolding yourself, right? And I think with pornography, that's understood. I was at a Life Surge event. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Life Surge teams out there. They run these Christian business conferences. They fly in guys like Tim Tebow, Ed Milet. They had Bethel Worship there. It was incredible. 7,000 people, Tampa, Florida, right? And Tim Tebow was one of the speakers. So you looked around, you saw Tebow jerseys everywhere, right? But two or three of the speakers drove this message home about wearing professional baseball jerseys. I have a jersey on right now, but it's for my company, right? It's got Coach Frank on the back. Like, I, at 25 years old, said I will never put another man's name on my back. But they were driving this message home about, you'll go Sunday afternoon, throw your hands up in the air, scream, shout, holler, like, for another man living out his dream. And then you drink yourself to sorrow. And then you wake up on Monday morning hating the life that you're living. I think that is a message. That is an example that needs to be driven home. It's like, stop living your life through other people's lenses. What are you here to do? They've got gifts to do that thing. What are your gifts?
Well, and let's just take it, let's make it super practical. Because let's say you do look up to them, okay? You think it's freaking awesome. Well, then are you playing baseball? Are you playing football? Are you actually doing it somewhere in your life? It's okay to emulate another man and go, hey, that's dope. I want to be like that. Then go do it. But don't emulate them for the sake of abdication of who you were meant to be. That's where it becomes just a bunch of bullcrap, because now I'm wasting my time and my energy and my resources to promote someone else that I'm not even personally benefiting from. It's just another form of escapism for me. I don't have to engage with that. No, if you're going to emulate another man, and let's say you are going to wear the jersey, you better be wearing it because you're living up to the expectations of whatever that jersey represents. You better figure out a way to be able to live up to that standard. You go to a certain person's church because you like the worship or you like the speaking. That's not necessarily wrong. I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to live to that standard and you're not going to live up to the standard of the songs you're singing, why are you going? What's the purpose? You're not even living up to the standard of the people that you're saying you value so much enough to drive your car, take the time, get over to the church, hear their message, but you're not going to live up to that standard? Why? Why are you doing this? To just look good to other people? Don't do this to look good to other. That's one of the lowest forms of identity. I think someone might have been Nowen that said, the lowest form of identity is when you assess who you are based on what others think of you, what you own, and what you do for a living. Those are the three lowest forms of identity that you can have. What other people think about you, what you do for a living, and would I say what others think about you? What others think about you, what you do for a living, and what you have, what you own. And those three are the lowest standard. And so to do things just so that you have a good appearance, again, it's a waste of time if you're not going to live it out. And I think everybody should go to church. That's great. Go to church. But what I'm telling you is, if you're not going to emulate or live out or activate the things that you're hearing or experiencing in your everyday life, that is a waste. It's a waste of your time. And to me, that's one of the reasons we started the fight. Because I was like, I have to give men tools to walk this out every day, because I don't think they actually know how to do it. They love the inspiration. They love motivation. I'm just tired of it. There's too much on YouTube. I don't need motivation. I don't need like the hype. I need somebody to look me in the eyes and go, hey, you're acting like an idiot. I need you to do X, Y, Z. Do that for 3 weeks and come back to me and tell me how it worked out. And then whatever didn't work out, we're going to adjust. Just like any workout routine. The fight, we're creating a workout routine for a man's soul. That's what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not working out my soul, I'm not working out my mind, I'm not working out my heart, then I'm out here doing all these other things that I'm claiming are going to make me a better person, but I'm not working them out. But physically, I work out every day. I'm pumping iron, I'm going and running, I'm doing that stuff, but I'm not working out the parts of me that actually make me who I am. Dude, I'll never have the impact I desire to have, even in my own home, because I'm so disconnected from who I'm meant to be.
Yeah, let's get into, maybe some, I don't know if they'd be tangible steps or practical application here on this kind of shifting, death of old self, creation of a new identity. You talked about working out here, from 2008 to 2017, 2018, Frank identified as a bodybuilder. Like I attached on to walking in any room. It's the biggest, strongest, I carried the biggest presence. A lot of that was me projecting strength through the world because I was broken on the inside, right? Like I had to go through a healing kind of journey. And what that led me to do was literally, I had to lose 50 pounds of muscle, Jake. Like I had to leave what was my identity for a year, didn't set foot in the gym, and look at myself after being 260 shredded at 209 pounds. But it wasn't until that point that I truly was able to heal the younger Frank and accept me for who God created to me. Now I've been able to put a lot of that back on because, muscle memory and all these type of things. I would say I still have a portion of myself is the identity of a bodybuilder, but it's not the main thing. Like it's not the thing that protects me from the world, right? My entire life has been shared across platforms. Now, millions of people have heard, my deepest, darkest secrets and struggles. So if a guy is out there and maybe the Rolex watch, right? That's his identity, or he's the business owner, CEO, or maybe he is the guy that's like, we won the ball game, right? So his identity is latched into his team. What's the step to maybe release that part, kill that part off, and then begin to find the identity that God gave him?
Well, it's really twofold. Like if I was dealing with what you just told me, you just gave me a whole lot of information, right? So you were going to the gym for what reason? When you walked in, you were the what?
I was the bodybuilder.
The biggest? No, you were the big, strongest. You told me. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So who were you trying to impress in that room? Just on a baseline, everybody in the room, right? So everybody in the room.
Oh, dude, I would have this whole routine, walked in with a big shirt on, got the pump going. I'd stand in the middle of the gym, take it off, had the stringer tank. I was the loud guy in the gym. Like I picked up the biggest weight of.
Right. Now, Frank, who are you really trying to impress? Whose approval did you really want and they weren't in that room?
I think my dad.
Yeah, there you go. That's the beginning of the work right there, dude. And then I would ask you, when is the first time you remembered having to be that big in a room to get his approval? And you don't have to answer that right now, but do you get what I'm saying? Like we don't need to do that work right here. But the point is, everybody wants behavior modification, but your behavior is the end of the line. Behavior is just the fruit. You don't change behavior through sin management, lust management, whatever. You change it by changing your beliefs, but your beliefs were developed when you were a kid and had no say, because beliefs turn into values, which turn into behaviors. So if I don't change my beliefs, if I'm disciplined, I might be able to knock a few off, but guess what? I'm going to be going around that cycle for the rest of my life. We call that story work. That's the work that we do at the fight. Is I go, that's great. Tell me where you are. What are the behaviors that you're not stoked about right now in your life, or things you wish could change, but you just never seem to change? Okay, now give me all the language. And we do a lot of tools like this at a fight weekend. This is where it gets really personal in terms of our fight weekends, because we just bring small groups of men into a space where they can share their story. And we do the work of walking them backwards. We call it following the thread, which is what we just did with you, where it's like, okay, so that's awesome. Give me the scene. Okay, now who are you really trying to impress in that moment? Oh, my brother. Oh, my dad. Oh, my grandpa. Oh, my uncle. Oh, my teacher. Oh, this person. Oh, that. And the problem with modern psychology is we want to make people good or bad. So there's two versions of this. There's three versions of this. So there's like, we want to make the person good or bad? Oh, it was your dad? Oh, he must have been a really bad person. There are no good or bad people. There's only broken people. That's just the reality of it. Like pop psychology trying to make people bad or good for the sake of you feeling better is unhelpful, because that was the only family you knew. So if I'm getting rid of the bad or good, I just start to learn to accept what is. What is reality? No, you don't have to defend your dad anymore. No, you don't have to defend your mom anymore. You don't have to defend your uncle. Well, but he did the best he could. That's what I always hear from men. But they did the best they could. I don't care. Not because I don't love you, but at the end of the day, it's irrelevant how hard they tried. What's relevant is how it's impacting you today. So we get rid of bad or good, good or evil, all those things, just what impacted me. But in religion, then we do something even worse, in my opinion, which is it's all gone. We never have to think about it again. And it's like, no. That's not accurate. Jesus didn't save you from your story. He saved you from your sin. That's a big difference, dude. If Jesus saved me from my sin and not my story, that means I have to keep my scars, which, by the way, when he resurrected from the grave, what did he keep? His scars. The only man-made thing in heaven, is the scars on Jesus's body. And he did not get rid of them. What did he use them for? He used the scars on his body to destroy doubt in Thomas. I wonder how many people on planet Earth are struggling with doubts in faith because they've been spending so much time covering up their scars, which are access points to destroying the very doubt that's destroying you. And so for me, religion says it's all dead, it's all under the blood. Well, I understand that. My sin is covered. The ramifications of my bad decision making is covered. But the prisoner who's still serving his sentence for going and murdering someone before they were saved still has to finish the sentence. There are ramifications for my choices because my freedom does not depend on my circumstances. That dude in prison, Paul and Silas, some of people remember the story, Paul and Silas are in prison and they're praying and they're worshiping and the doors fall off of the prison. Most of us would be like, yay, we're in, let's leave. Why? Because we define our freedom by our circumstances, not by our interior life. Paul and Silas didn't have to leave the prison cell to be free. They were free when they went into the prison cell. It changed, the doors falling off changed nothing for them, because they were free in here. And I know so many men, they're not trying to get free in here. They're trying to get free out here. I want financial freedom. I want freedom from porn. I want freedom from my bad marriage. I want freedom from this. I want freedom from that. No, freedom doesn't begin out here. Freedom begins in here. It starts right here. But that's a whole lot more work, because I have to go into some deep places, which is our third option, right? So pop psychology, good or bad, we'll just name call. Hopefully you'll feel better. Religion, let's just cut it off, all covered under the blood, whatever language you want to use, it's gone. Don't ever think about it again. There's another option, which is called integration, which, by the way, the word holy, the root word for the word holy is wholeness. So that's why the Trinity is so valuable in the image of God, because they have been interacting in wholeness, submitted to one another for the purpose and benefit of all of created order, past, present, and future, fully submitted to one another in integration. And integration says, I don't get rid of the 8-year-old boy who was hit by his dad. I go and let that boy know he's not alone anymore. And I'm still that little boy. But I'm the only one who knows that little boy on planet Earth right now. So I'm the only one with Christ that can go back and see healing there so that I stop carrying it forward into my everyday life. And those are our options. You can pick any one you want. I'm just telling you from what I've seen, the one with the most longevity and staying power, the cycle breaking power, is when I go back and do the work of wholeness and integration with the places I've been and the things I've seen.
I love this, man, and I Appreciate you using me there. I mean, it brought some. I don't want to say it brought new clarity, but I've been down this journey, done all the healing. I've had to transcend my story and now live it out. And the darkest parts of me are now what is creating the light within the world with the work that we're doing. Because despite being the biggest, strongest guy, like I was the one that was demasculating himself by watching porn every single day. And I realized like it didn't matter how big, strong, financially successful I was. Like there was an inner hole within me that only God could fill, right? And then I had to.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to say it right here. This is not fair. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would change it to go, there isn't a hole there. There's a little boy who's still hurting. It's why he's looking at porn. It's a little, and I get we've used there's a hole in our lives. And I understand the language. I just go, I don't know if it's a hole as much as if it is a person or a version of myself that I don't want to look at. And if I call it a hole, I can shove whatever I want in there and feel better. So I can go worship, I can go pray, I can go do the missions trip. All I'm doing is shoving things into what I think is a hole. But the problem is it never brings the integration that I actually need in order to live differently, to change my beliefs and values. So the fruit of those beliefs and values birth new fruit. And when I go back and look at my life, and we do this tons with men, I mean, there's hundreds of stories in our lives, and they're not the big dramatic ones. That's the craziest part. It's not the 10s. It's the 5 to 7s right in the middle where we just never looked at them because they weren't that important. And when we do that and pull that story forward, we're no longer trying to fill holes. We're trying to bring those parts of ourselves back into alignment, agreement, and integration so that I am a whole person with a whole story walking forward into the fullness I was created for.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And here's a great follow up though, because I think in the opening, right, it was what's at the root of this crisis of masculinity within the church, and it was lack of initiation from boy to man. I think some people are going to hear that initiation from boy to man. Okay, you leave the boy behind you, but then you say here, no, the boy's got to come with you. So which one it is? Are we leaving the boy behind, or are we bringing him with us? And if so, what does that look like?
No. Immaturity is different than masculine maturity, and they're inside of one another. The image that I love is in a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and it's in a powerful book on the archetypes of man, the 4 main archetypes inside of masculine psyche, and all these things, right? But the idea is that boy, I do leave him in a sense of I grow beyond the need. Like let's take king, for example, as the main archetype, right? The boyhood image of a king is the divine child, right? They are both ultimately valuable and completely helpless. So it's like this beautiful picture of you are insanely valuable, but you can do nothing. Right? That is boyhood and maturity, divine. It's the divine child. But what happens is if I carry that into manhood, then I make the whole world about me. Everybody's got to be about me, all the things. Me, right? But I'm still helpless. Now, here's the cool part. If I carry that into maturity, which is the king, I'm no longer the divine child. I'm a king. I know my boundaries. I know my limits. I've studied my own limitations. I've studied my own story. I'm integrated in terms of all my brokenness and my greatness. Now, when I'm a king, I access the divine child by remembering that I have value. I have value. I am worth something. I am enough. Right where I am enough. I am, but I'm not any longer the center of the universe. Now, I am completely not helpless, but guess what I am? Vulnerable. So all I'm doing is I'm growing that thing into masculine maturity. And that's what rites of passage historically and like really sociologically, like this is how it worked for generations and generations and generations. We'd walk boys in the covering of mature masculinity into that space with us. It wasn't like, okay, go become a man. We walked with them. There was real tribal initiation. Dude, if we're taking boys out on a weekend and say, hey, I take you hunting and now you're a man, bull crap. That stuff's all just ridiculous. I love that. We should do that, like in the sense of go hang out with our kids in the woods. Awesome. But at the end of the day, tribal and ritual initiation was a whole entire process that began when the boy was young because he's looking at men in his tribe and going, I want to be like that. That's where it starts. Where are the men that little boys are looking up to and go, I want to be like that? And the hard part is when we used to be not when it was a theocracy and there were like kings and like these kings held themselves in such a way that young boys, with analogy, young boys metaphorically would go, hold my crown until I'm big enough to wear it. Because they could see culturally that King Arthur, that's why we tell mythological stories with the fight. Like that entire book I wrote, The Journey to Biblical Masculinity, is based around the story of Parzival. Why? They would tell those stories around campfires to show young boys the cost of moving into masculinity and have something to look up to and look forward to. And they did it regardless of the cost because they so badly wanted to be like the men they were seeing in their tribe. They wanted to be like that. I want to be like that. Where are the boys looking right now? The freaking YouTube? Like what like streamers? That's what we're giving them. Like that's what we're doing. Oh, awesome. Why? Because we have no dads in the home. So there you go. That's the issue. If my dad's not going to hold my crown, I guess I'll have this YouTuber do it. Oh, and then grown men are like, well, I didn't have a dad. I guess Donald Trump should do it. He should hold my crown. Or whatever politician you look up to. I don't care. We're still looking for a man to hold our crown because we don't believe we are equipped to carry it yet. That is the root system that we develop when it comes to an entire generation not being initiated. And now we're looking to somebody else to save us, somebody else to fix it, not to look up to, I want to be like them. That's who I want to be. I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my uncle. I want to be like my grandfather. I want to be like that. I want to be a man like that. That's what it looks like. I want that. I want to fight for a marriage for 60 years. I want to fight for a family. I don't care if my kids go sideways. I'm going to fight for them anyway because they're my kids. And it's like that kind of relentless lifestyle, dude, that inspires a generation unlike anything else you will ever see.
I love this conversation, man. And I would just add on to what you said, the absentee fathers, right? But then the ones that are in the home are fat, overweight, addicted to pornography, addicted to fantasy football, absent from their relationships, on their cell phone. And it's like, is that the model that you're giving to your children? Man, that divine child to king, dude, that hit me like right there, man. I see so much of my story integrated through that, man. So,
well, that's because you're so good. Let's be honest with that for a second. I just want to encourage you. Like that's what's so beautiful about what you're doing, Frank. What you're doing right now with your entire platform, you're doing it because of your lack. You're not doing it because you got it figured out. I'm not leading the fight because I got it figured out, but you're kicking butt because you know what it's like to not have it. I'm just like stoked for you because I'm like, dude, you're amazing because look at what you're doing with the lack. That's freaking impressive. And it's inspiring to a bunch of guys who follow you and look up to you because they're like, dude, that dude, he can hold my crown for a little bit. Not in some worship way, but like, dude, I don't trust anybody. Can you help me? And that's stunningly beautiful. And it says a lot about your character.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. I told two people this yesterday. It's random we're talking about this right now, but I started a YouTube channel years ago in the fitness space, never really took off, but it was 2020, the summer. I had just left a marketing agency and I was all in on Rebuild Recovery. I'm like, God put me here. My job is to help and serve men. And I committed to doing 1 year of YouTube. I remember hearing Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels say, if you do one video on a platform for 365 days, you will never suffer for leads again. And I tested the theory. And for 2.5 years, Jake, I showed up every single day. No script. I had a cell phone camera, not even an external microphone. It was the rawest, realest thing that you could do. But all I thought about, man, was what does young Frank need to hear? What did I need to hear when I was in my 20s? What did I need to hear in my 30s? And it grew and it grew and it grew. And now we have a thriving organization. The podcast thing. These are my questions. Like I don't come here with, pre-scripted. There's some touching points that I want to talk about, but mostly this is my curiosity. And now we've grown an audience that follows many of the same things, is interested in many of the same things. So I appreciate the recognition there, man. And I think it's awesome to share. So let's talk about this journey to biblical masculinity, 12 paths that every man must take. Obviously, we want to get the guys to check out the book. I think release date is August 6th. So guys, check that out tomorrow after the release date of this podcast. But can we talk through maybe some of these paths? Like if there's 12 of them, what's the first path that a man needs to take into biblical masculinity?
Let me just grab my book here and let me get us going here a little bit. So, so the thing that I love about this is we kind of even designed the inside so it looks like a path. And the idea of the path I will say this, the idea of the path is no arrival. One of the first things you have to die to as a man is you have to die to arriving, because there is no arrival. You're never going to be a perfect Christian. You're never going to be a perfect husband. You're never going to be a perfect father. You're never going to be a perfect business owner. You're never going to be a perfect leader. Just let that thing die. Because one of the first tenets of the fight in general is death before death. Because if I die before I die, I never have to die. And that is reality while I'm still living. And that is eternity when I go and leave this planet. And so that is huge for us, the core value of death before death. I have to learn to die well. So, and we believe that death always leads to resurrection, redemption, and reconciliation. So when your finances are dying, it's just an invitation to greater potential. When your influence is dying, it's just an invitation to greater levels of authority and being able to walk that out in your life. So we have to make some of those agreements, and assumptions are at the very beginning of the entire book. But the paths are this: they're departing business as usual, stepping into a bigger story, embracing where you came from, listening to the call of adventure, stumbling forward in immaturity, tempering aggression through initiation, finding a wise elder, encountering divine feminine, discovering true strength by embracing failure, engaging in the redemptive work of grief, learning to integrate the shadow, arriving where you always belonged. And the first one really is departing business as usual, because we have to let go of the assumption that we know what the hell we're talking about, because we just don't. And anybody who says they have this thing on lock and figured out, just yell liar and move on and watch a different podcast, leave the meeting, because it's just not true. Like nobody fully understands what we're engaging with when it comes to God, when it comes to masculinity, when it comes to how to do this well, because the same practice, that's why I didn't make this, like, for me, this is an invitation into what it looks like practically to your life. This is not a 12-step process. It's just 12 steps every man has to take. So that is the good news. It's not like I take the 12 and I'm done. It's like, no, you take the 12 and you start over in a different area. Like every one of the areas, we have what we call the 7 pillars of masculinity, which, for us are faith, family, finance, fitness, friendship, formation, and fun. And those are the 7 pillars of the masculine life. And in each one of those areas, I have a set of beliefs, I have a set of values, and I have a set of behaviors that I bring into that because of my experience. So the first thing that they would do, even in ritual initiation or tribal initiation, is they would have the boy exit business as usual. So for us, we have to get to a place in our minds where we can start, because it doesn't begin with our heart and it does not begin with our hands. It begins with our mind, because as a man thinketh, so he is. So we have to recognize that whatever's going in here, I am going to produce that environment around me. Whatever I am thinking about in the morning, that's why I tell men, everybody's doing, morning routines. It is cold plunge and it is an activation exercise where I walk through every single morning. I do breathing so that I can be present. I do blessing, which is being grateful. I do filling because I want to be completely centered in God from the beginning to the end. And third, I do receiving, which is I'm going to lay hold of the promises that are in my life that have still not yet to be achieved. And I'm going to see them as finished, celebrate them as finished, feel them as finished, and watch the impact in my mind of what the impact of me finishing those things looks like, so that my mind is right moving into, well, I'm going to work out. Well, I got to do this. Well, I got to do that. Great. Do all that. Get this right, and it will transform every day. Because if you want to change your life, you have to begin one day at a time and one thought at a time. And when we talk about these 12 paths, we're leaving business as usual and we're going on an adventure that's going to cost us something. Like, you don't get to just go back home afterwards. Like, that's the sucky part about this work. I tell everyone with the fight, I'm like, you are legitimately like taking the pill. You are leaving business as usual and you can't go back. This is some matrix reality here. You will be introduced to things that you wish you did not know about yourself. But the moment you know it, you now have the power to do something about it. And nobody else has that power, just you. And so we're helping men through those paths. A couple of the other ones, just engaging with grief, recognizing the feminine in your own life without becoming feminized. That's a huge one. But grief is a big deal in men's life. So I'll just touch on that before we move on. But grief is the gateway to men's emotions. So most men can't touch their emotions because every other emotion is the defender of grief. So if I can't engage with grief, then I can't engage with love. I can't engage with gratefulness. I can't engage with mercy. I can't engage with justice. I can't engage with any other joy. I'll never engage with real joy or anything else because I'm limited by my lack of grieving in my life. And to walk a man into grief, it was as easy as what we did just earlier. I would do the same exact line. I do this with men on our one-on-one calls all the time, through our sparring sessions. It's like I'll sit with them and I'll be like, all right, what do you want to get through? What are you experiencing? And they'd tell me a story and I'd walk them back into a place where they're now not just giving me like, oh, I'm still trying to impress my dad. I'd go, when was the first time you had to impress your dad? And it doesn't have to be the actual first time. What is the first time you remember? Now, don't do third person. Don't do 30,000 foot. Sit in it. Sit in your body. And I ask them, what are you wearing? What does it smell like? What are the colors? What are the clothes? What is it? All the details. Give it to me. And when I feel like they're in that space, I go, what are you feeling? And it'll be like scared. Okay, scared might be real, but is scared covering up the fact that you feel sad because your dad is the one scaring you in that moment? Because that should be the guy protecting you. And yes, fear is manifesting. Yes, fear is showing up as primary. But what about the little boy who just wanted a dad to tell him how amazing he was? And then the tears come. Then the sadness comes. But the gateway through that, and we do this with the fight all the time because this is how men cry. Men do this, And so we do this in the fight all the time, especially at fight weekends when we're doing stories and stuff, is I'll go, hey, is it okay to touch your face? Every single time. Because every man does this, and I'll grab their chin. I go, we are men. We own every tear we cry. Keep your chin up and own that. Own it. Keep the chin up. Put your shoulders back. Strong, powerful position, and then cry as long as you need. And we'll sit here with you. We're not in any rush. And then most men, because we've learned this, we're trying to hide. That's what we're trying to do. And I'll go, okay, hey, I see you. We see you. No need, man. We're good. Strong. And then all of a sudden, guess what? They have access to do that with their wives. Now they have access to love their wives in a way they didn't prior because they can engage with the grief and the sadness of how they treated their wives because they felt like crap. No man wants to treat his wife badly. We don't walk down the aisle and go, man, I cannot wait to treat her like crap, But then the moment she goes, hey, I feel like you're treating me like crap, we go, defense. Why? Because we know, but we don't want to engage with it because then we'd have to get into grief. And grief, man, that's why most men default to aggression because violence is the defender of grief in our lives. So you have 3 gateways, right? So you have aggression, that blocks us from grief, and grief that is guarding the rest of our emotions. And so when anger shows up in a man's life, we've done a lot of these now, and I watch it. I watch him get angry. And I'm like, okay, dude, feel that. Do you want us to hold it? We'll do a bunch of tools around it and whatever. We'll let people get as angry as they need. Let's do it. Let's engage with it. But then we're going to get you to the sadness that's behind it. And so that pathway in the book is the one I've seen the most happen with in a man's life, where he's engaging with it practically and it transforms who he is.
Yeah, man. Jake, I appreciate you so much, man. I mean, the amount of men that you just gave permission to sit and feel their emotions and cry is powerful. So for you guys that are out there, man, if you weren't fully tuned in for the last 7-8 minutes, rewind, go back and just sit in a quiet space and listen and allow everything to flow through you, man. Like, cause you were just sharing more things. And I'm like,
right. And a man can do that. It's very simple. What are you experiencing today that you just don't want anymore? Okay, great. Then let's walk backwards just a little bit to what do you feel in that moment? I'm trying to prove myself, or I'm feeling less than, I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling stupid. Okay, whatever emotion that is, walk back to the first time you remember feeling that. Then put yourself fully in that moment. You can do this at home anytime. Put yourself in that moment. Maybe you got triggered by your wife. Your wife said something and you're like, oh, that's just a trick. Oh, dude, walk it backwards. When was the first time you felt like that? Was it because your mom told you what to do? Was it because someone else told you? Because that emotion doesn't equate to what your wife just asked you to do. So just go back to when you felt that emotion, put yourself in that space, and allow yourself to walk backwards into grief so that the rest of it can come out and you can show kindness in all the relationships you currently have.
Powerful. Um, Wrapping up here, ask you a couple personal questions, man. I'm incredibly impressed with your ability to recall information that you've read. So just curious, like, do you have a process of reading and taking notes? Are you just autistic in that part of your brain? Like, how do we recall these, I mean, you've dropped 12, 13 different, book titles here.
Yeah, my books just I don't read fast, and I read 12 at a time. So that's just honest. Like I read real slow. I have probably 150 journals that I keep. So my journals are like I've been journaling since I was 16. So I literally, my wife at one point asked me, she goes, "What did you think about me when you first met me?" Went back to the journal, opened the page, and said, "You can read it for yourself." And so that's the part of that's one of the key tools that we teach. I'm actually releasing a journal next month so that I can help men really engage with journaling, body, mind, soul, and spirit. So it's very much like even physical, water intake, nutrition, sleep habits, all of that stuff. But I want men to really learn how to write down stuff, because we take in so much information and culture that we have to begin to put it somewhere where we can re-access it. I'm looking, a side note on technology, I'm looking forward to scanning all my journals into AI, my personal AI. You know how they're building like the personal ones? I'm going to scan, because here's the cool part. I'm going to scan, since I was 16, sermon notes about my life. I will scan all of them in, and I can ask my 16-year-old self questions about what he believed and how it changed his life. Now, again, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I will literally be able to upload every sermon, every single thing I've ever preached, everything I've ever written on, every book I've ever written, every song I've ever written. And I can go, what are my thoughts on? And then watch it play itself back to me. And I'm not talking about on AI, just in case people don't understand the technology. They're developing personal AIs, like almost your own hard drive at home. So you have a personal bank. Some really wealthy people are doing this now. And I can't wait to do that, because I have so many ideas floating in here that if I didn't have this to re-access it, and I didn't take notes, like these books, like King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, that's what the inside of the book looks like. You know what I mean? These are my tabs, and these are my notes inside of notes. So it's like every single page. And I read things that are not in alignment, which is how you gain real wisdom, is read things that are not in alignment, so you're forced to make up your own decisions. So it's like, I'm not reading.
I mean, you're studying.
Oh, dude, yeah, I wish I could turn the camera around. There's just loads of books here. My wife hates it because I'm reading, because I'm right now, dude. Okay, so right now I'm reading Ray Dalio's Principles. I'm reading Anti-Fragile. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm reading The Fourth Turning. I'm reading, where's the other one? It's over. Come of Age, which is about raising wise elders and how we're in an elder deficit in our culture. And I'm reading, and the other one, because John Tyson just came out with Fighting Shadows, reading that book. And there's an old Japanese, I found this old Japanese theologian, like a mystic, and he wrote a book called The 3 Mile an Hour God. And dude, I can't get through but a page or two of it because it's just so insightful and rich. So I love learning. And so that's my life. I pretty much
love it, man.
post up.
I absolutely love it. Yeah, man. I just, fourth turning, man. I just listened to the episode with PBD on the flight back. I was out west for the last week, and that was when I downloaded Spotify. I was watching it on the flight on the way home, man. Shocking, eye-opening.
Yeah, and the new one that he just released is The Fourth Turning is Here. So this one about winter is so good. Dude, so any businessmen out there, these are books, those are essentials, because you stand to make the most amount of wealth in the season we're heading into. And men who are prepared and thinking about legacy can build right now in ways that others are unprepared to build. And you can do this. Like, it doesn't matter if you have $1,000 or $100,000. There are things you can do right now to set up your great grandchildren into a future that you never even thought about for yourself.
Yeah, Jake, we might have to have you back on here in a short window of time, man, because we touched identity, a little bit on family, real masculinity today. I'd love to kind of explore the legacy and maybe set these guys up for what's to come. So if you'd be open for it, I'd love to bring you back on, man.
This was great. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell the guys out there, obviously, about the fight, the book releasing tomorrow. So make sure to check that out. We'll have that link down there in the show notes, and then anything else that you kind of got going on in your world and where they can connect with you. And then we'll wrap it up with our last and final question.
Yeah, of course. The thing that I would say is just go to thisisthefight.com. We have a platform that has tons of courses in it. A lot of what I'm even sharing on now, we break into, I think we've got 80 videos on there over 6 courses. We release a new course once a month, I think, for the remainder of the year. And we're just helping men try to walk this out practically. We want you to be able to have the real tools to daily do that, but also connected to a deep community. So we've got a bunch of community on there. Every Monday, we do Man Talk Monday Lives. That's open to anyone. And then every single day we do something called Daily Drive, which is, like I said earlier, a workout app for the man's soul. So we're like trying to give you, how do I walk this out today? So thisisthefight.com has even the links to the book, has the links to our community. Our fight weekend is going to be in November. So if you want to come join us in the Dallas area, we have an entire weekend just for men doing a lot of this work. And so we call it deep work and dangerous play. So that's the weekend in a nutshell. So anybody who wants to join us for something like that, please come.
I love it, guys. And all that will be linked down there in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be down there in the description box below. Jake, last question, man. We end every show here with the same and final question. Title of our podcast is obviously called The Superman Life. It's been, a 5-year kind of journey of me discovering and kind of defining what that means to me. But I love to always get the guest take. So Jake Hamilton, founder of The Fight, former Jesus Culture musician, which we didn't even touch on any of that part of your story. But what does living a Superman life mean to you?
It means that I'm living the reality of my life, not the fantasy of it. It means that I'm accepting reality as it is, not as I wish it was. And I'm willing to pay the price, whatever it is, to be able to live in that reality with the people that I've been given and the time that I've been given.
Beautiful. Guys, check out thisisthefight.com. Follow Jake. His socials are plugged down there in the show notes. As always, guys, you can support this. Ratings, reviews, continue to share this across all the platforms. But we love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.